The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers and clattered against the concrete floor of my garage. 3 in the morning, and I'm underneath my Ford pickup like some kind of mechanical vampire, listening to my wife whisper sweet nothings into her phone through the thin walls of our house. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow." Lumi's voice drifted through the darkness. "The client dinner should wrap up by 9, then we can finally have some real time together." Client dinner, right. And I'm the Pope's personal mechanic. I'd been married to Kellan Verrin for 15 years, and somewhere along the way, her late-night work calls had become as regular as my morning coffee. The woman who used to curl up next to me watching old movies now treated our bedroom like a hotel lobby, brief stops between more important destinations. My phone buzzed against my chest pocket. A text notification lit up the screen, but it wasn't mine. Lumi's phone, sitting on my workbench where she'd left it while grabbing a glass of wine, displayed a preview that made my stomach twist into knots. "Can't stop thinking about your lips. Tomorrow can't come fast enough." Z. How romantic, how mysterious, how absolutely infuriating. I crawled out from under the truck, wiping my hands on an old rag that had seen better decades. 43 years old, and I'm playing detective in my own marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 2 tours in Afghanistan keeping watch for enemies, only to come home and find one sleeping in my bed. The garage door connecting to the kitchen creaked open. Lumi appeared in her silk pajamas, the ones I'd bought her last Christmas. Her auburn hair caught the fluorescent light, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. Then she smiled, that practiced PR smile, the one she used on difficult clients. "Still working on the truck?" she asked, reaching for her phone. "You know there are mechanics for that." "Yeah, well, some things you've got to handle yourself," I said, watching her fingers dance across the screen. "Who was that calling so late?" "Miranda from the office. We're prepping for the Henderson campaign launch." She didn't even look up from her phone. "You know how these big accounts can be." Miranda. Sure. Miranda with the deep voice and the apparent inability to use proper grammar in text messages. "Must be a hell of a campaign," I said. "Lot of late nights lately." Lumi's fingers paused for just a fraction of a second. In the Army, we called that a tell, the tiny hesitation that screams louder than any confession. "The agency's expanding," she said, tucking the phone against her chest. "Regional accounts, bigger clients. It's a good thing, Kellan. More money, better opportunities." "For who?" "For us. For our future." Our future. The phrase hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I couldn't remember the last time she'd talked about us without it sounding like a business proposal. "I'm heading to bed," she said, already turning away. "Don't stay up too much longer." I watched her disappear into the house, then stared at the oil stain spreading beneath my truck. 15 years of marriage, and I'd become background noise in my own life. The reliable husband who fixed things and asked few questions. The steady paycheck from my logistics job that kept the mortgage current while she climbed the corporate ladder in her designer heels. But I wasn't as reliable as she thought, and I definitely wasn't as stupid. The next morning, I made coffee and scrambled eggs while Lumi rushed through her morning routine. She'd always been beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads in grocery stores and made waiters stumble over their words. At 39, she'd only gotten more polished, more confident, more distant. "I'll be late again tonight," she said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "The Henderson presentation is tomorrow, and we need everything perfect." "Of course you will." She paused, studying my face in the mirror's reflection. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just seems like you're always late these days." "It's called having a career, Kellan. Some of us can't punch a time clock and call it a day." There it was, the subtle dig wrapped in professional ambition. My job managing logistics for a mid-sized shipping company wasn't glamorous, but it paid well and kept me sharp. Military training doesn't just disappear because you trade fatigues for khakis. "Right," I said. Silly me. thinking marriage might involve actually seeing each other occasionally. Lumi grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "We'll talk about this later. I really can't be late." The door slammed behind her, leaving me alone with my coffee and a growing certainty that later would never come. At least, not the way she imagined. I finished breakfast and headed to work, but my mind stayed focused on that text message. "Can't stop thinking about your lips." The words played on repeat like a song you can't shake. Who was Z? How long had this been going on? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The shipping warehouse buzzed with its usual controlled chaos. Trucks backing up to loading docks, workers shouting coordinates, the constant beep of forklifts navigating between towering shelves of inventory. I'd been managing this operation for 8 years, and the rhythm of it usually calmed my nerves. Today, it felt like background noise to the storm building in my head. "Brooks!" My boss, Jim Patterson, waved me over to his office. "Got a minute?" Jim was old-school management, worked his way up from the loading dock, respected his people, and didn't tolerate nonsense. He'd hired me when other employers saw veteran and worried about PTSD or attitude problems. "What's on your mind?" I asked, settling into the chair across from his desk. "You tell me. You've seemed off lately. Everything okay at home?" Jim had a gift for reading people, probably why he'd survived 30 years in a business that chewed up managers like a wood chipper. "Just the usual married life complications," I said. "Want some unsolicited advice from an old guy who's been married 42 years? Shoot. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. But don't go looking for trouble unless you're prepared to find it." I nodded, but Jim's words only confirmed what I already knew. I was way past the looking stage. The trouble had already found me. The rest of the day crawled by like a wounded animal. Every hour brought me closer to another evening alone, while Lumi attended her mysterious client dinner. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made a decision that would either save my marriage or destroy it completely. Our house sat in one of those middle-class neighborhoods that developers called charming and real estate agents called established. Translation: the houses were old enough to have character and expensive enough to require constant maintenance. I'd spent countless weekends fixing leaky faucets, painting trim, and pretending domestic bliss was just one more home improvement project away. Lumi's car was already gone. No surprise there. I walked through the empty rooms, noting the small changes that had accumulated over months. Her favorite coffee mug sat unwashed in the sink. She used to wash it immediately, a quirk I'd found endearing. Now it felt like evidence of someone who no longer cared about the small courtesies that kept a household running. In our bedroom, I opened her dresser drawer and found what I was looking for: the backup charging cable for her phone. Lumi was meticulous about technology, always worried about battery life and lost data. She'd synced her phone to our home computer months ago, back when she still trusted me with access to her digital life. The computer hummed to life, and I navigated to the backup files with the methodical precision I'd learned managing complex shipping schedules. If you want to understand someone's real life, don't listen to their words. Look at their data. What I found made my hands shake with something that wasn't quite anger yet, but was heading in that direction fast. Months of text messages with someone named Zane Whitaker. Dinner receipts from restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel confirmations for weekend conferences that didn't exist on any professional calendar I could find. And photos, not explicit, but intimate enough to make my 15-year marriage feel like a business partnership that had outlived its usefulness. The messages told a story I wished I didn't understand. Lumi and Zane had been involved for at least 6 months, maybe longer. He worked at her agency, some kind of regional director with a corner office and a company car. The texts revealed a man who thought he was clever and a woman who'd become someone I didn't recognize. Can't wait to get away from all the pretending, she'd written just last week. Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life. Someone else's life. Apparently, being married to me qualified as an alternate reality she was eager to escape. I printed the most damaging messages and saved copies to a secure folder. Then I sat in the dark living room, waiting for her to come home and lie to my face one more time. She walked through the door at 11:30, carrying takeout bags and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who'd had a very good evening. "Sorry I'm so late," she said, not sounding sorry at all. The client wanted to discuss every detail of the campaign. You know how it is. "Yeah," I said from the shadows. "I'm starting to get a pretty clear picture of how it is." She jumped, not expecting me to be sitting there in the dark like some kind of domestic ghost. "God, Kellan, you scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark?" "Just thinking." "About what?" I stood up slowly, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light filtering through our front windows. "About honesty, about trust, about what happens when people stop pretending." Something in my voice made her take a step backward. Good. It was about time someone in this house felt off balance. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked. "You're acting strange." "Strange how? Strange like asking questions? Strange like caring where my wife spends her evenings?" "We've been over this. I told you. You told me a lot of things." I moved closer, close enough to smell her perfume mixed with cologne that definitely wasn't mine. Question is, how much of it was actually true? For a moment, her carefully constructed facade cracked. I saw fear flicker across her face, quickly replaced by the defensive anger of someone caught in a lie. "I don't know what you're implying, but I don't appreciate the interrogation." "Interrogation?" I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "Lady, you haven't seen an interrogation yet." She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. "I'm going to bed," she said. "When you're ready to have a rational conversation, let me know." I watched her walk upstairs, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a countdown timer. She thought she was in control of this situation. She thought I was just another suspicious husband who could be managed with the right combination of guilt and gaslighting. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Jim would understand eventually, probably better than most people. Some battles require your full attention, and I had reconnaissance to conduct. Lumi left for the office with her usual rushed efficiency, pecking my cheek like we were business partners, acknowledging a successful quarterly meeting. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I was moving. First stop, Colby's Bar, a dive establishment that served as the unofficial intelligence hub for our little corner of the world. Kellan Verrin had been my friend since high school, back when we thought the biggest challenge in life would be passing algebra. He'd bought the bar 15 years ago and turned it into the kind of place where people came to forget their troubles and accidentally reveal everyone else's secrets. The morning crowd consisted of shift workers grabbing breakfast and retirees who treated the place like their personal social club. Colby looked up from wiping glasses when I walked in, his weathered face breaking into a grin. Well, well, the mysterious Kellan Brooks emerges from domestic paradise. He poured coffee without being asked. "What brings you to my establishment during daylight hours?" "Need some information?" "Ah." Colby's expression shifted to something more serious. "What kind of information?" "The kind that might hurt." He studied my face for a moment, then nodded toward the back booth where we used to plan our teenage adventures. Some things never change. "Talk to me," he said once we were seated. I laid out the situation without editorial comment. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the text messages, the hotel receipts. Colby listened without interruption, occasionally nodding like a doctor hearing familiar symptoms. "Zane Whitaker," he said when I finished. "Regional director at Morrison and Associates. Married, 2 kids, drives a Tesla, and thinks his charm works on everyone. You know him?" "He's been in here a few times with different women. Never his wife." Colby's expression darkened. Arrogant type who tips poorly and treats the staff like servants. I had him pegged as a cheater the first time he walked through my door. "What else?" "He's got a condo downtown. One of those glass towers that went up during the gentrification push. Expensive tastes, expensive habits. Word is he's leveraged to the hilt trying to maintain his lifestyle." This was why I'd come to Colby. The man had a network that would make the CIA jealous, and he remembered everything he heard. "I need more than gossip," I said. "What kind of more?" "The kind that gives me options." Colby leaned back, studying me with the careful attention he reserved for serious conversations. "Kellan, I've known you since we were kids. You're not the type to go off half-cocked. But this situation, it could get messy fast." "It's already messy. I'm just trying to figure out how messy it's going to get." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through contacts. "I might know someone who could help. But first, you need to decide what you really want here. You want to save the marriage, or you want to win the war?" The question hung between us like smoke from a house fire. 6 months ago, I would have said save the marriage without hesitation. Now, sitting in a dive bar planning reconnaissance on my own wife, I wasn't sure there was anything left to save. "I want the truth," I said finally. "All of it. Then I'll decide what comes next." Colby nodded and made a phone call. 20 minutes later, a woman named Janet Torres walked into the bar. She was maybe 50, dressed like a bank manager with the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Janet's a private investigator," Colby explained. "Specializes in domestic situations. Very discreet, very thorough." Janet slid into the booth across from me and got straight to business. Colby gave me the basics. "How much proof do you need, and how fast do you need it?" "Enough to be certain, and soon enough to matter. Photos, documentation, timeline reconstruction, the full package runs about $2,000. But based on what you've already found, I can probably get you what you need for half that." I thought about our joint savings account, the one Lumi had been contributing to less and less frequently. "How soon?" "Give me 3 days. If they're as careless as most cheaters, I'll have everything you need by Friday." We shook hands, and I wrote her a check that felt like buying ammunition for a war I hadn't wanted to fight. The rest of Wednesday crawled by like a wounded animal. I went through the motions of normal life, grocery shopping, paying bills, fixing a loose cabinet door that had been annoying me for months, domestic maintenance while my domestic life imploded. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lumi came home late again, full of apologies and explanations about client demands and deadline pressures. I nodded in all the right places and made appropriate sympathetic noises, all while studying her face for tells. She was good. I had to give her credit for that. If I hadn't seen the evidence, I might have believed her performance. "You seem better today," she said over dinner. "Less intense. Just working through some things." "Good. I was worried you were having some kind of midlife crisis." Midlife crisis. As if discovering your wife's infidelity was just another predictable phase like buying a sports car or taking up golf. "Nothing that dramatic," I said. "Just reevaluating priorities." She smiled and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I'm glad. We're good together, Kellan. We just need to remember that sometimes." The casual cruelty of that statement hit me like a physical blow. We're good together. Past tense masquerading as present reality. Thursday brought rain and a text message from Janet. "Making progress. Meet tomorrow at 2 p.m., same location." I spent the day at work, throwing myself into inventory management and shipping schedules with an intensity that made my staff nervous. Physical activity had always helped me think, and I needed clarity for whatever Janet was going to show me. Jim cornered me during lunch break, his expression concerned. "You sure everything's okay? You've been running on high gear all week." "Just trying to stay busy." "Busy's good, but don't burn yourself out. Whatever's eating at you, it'll still be there when you slow down." Jim's words stayed with me through the afternoon. He was right. Slowing down meant facing reality, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that conversation yet. Friday afternoon found me back in Colby's booth, waiting for Janet with the nervous energy of a soldier before a mission briefing. She arrived precisely at 2, carrying a manila envelope that looked heavier than it should. "Well?" I asked. Janet opened the envelope and spread photographs across the table like a dealer showing cards. Lumi and Zane entering his downtown condo. Lumi and Zane at an upscale restaurant I'd never heard of. Lumi and Zane in what appeared to be a heated argument outside a hotel I recognized from the receipts. "They're not particularly careful," Janet said. 3 meetings this week alone, always at his place or neutral locations. Never anywhere they might be recognized by her social circle. What else? Financial records show she's been contributing to a joint account with him. Small amounts, but regular, like they're planning something that requires shared resources. That hit harder than the photos. Shared finances meant shared futures, shared plans that didn't include me. "There's more," Janet continued. "I did some background checking on Mr. Whitaker. He's got gambling debts, credit problems, and a wife who's been asking questions about his schedule. Your wife might not be his only secret." "Meaning?" "Meaning he's got a pattern. This isn't a grand romance. It's a business arrangement. He gets discretionary income and companionship. She gets whatever fantasy she's buying into." I stared at the photographs, trying to reconcile the woman in the pictures with the person I'd married. Same face, same hair, same mannerisms. But the expression was different, animated, engaged, alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. "What do you want to do with this information?" Janet asked. "I'm not sure yet." "Word of advice? Don't sit on it too long. Situations like this have momentum. The longer you wait, the more entrenched they become." I paid Janet the remainder of her fee and gathered the photographs. Evidence of betrayal, documentation of the end of my marriage, proof that my instincts had been correct. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing in the ruins of something I'd spent 15 years building. That evening, Lumi came home early for the first time in weeks. She'd bought Chinese takeout from our old favorite restaurant and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. "I thought we could have a nice evening together," she said, setting the table with our good dishes. "Just the 2 of us, like old times." Old times. When we used to talk about everything and nothing, when her laugh could make me forget whatever problems the day had brought, when the future felt like something we were building together instead of something that was happening to us. "What's the occasion?" I asked. "Do we need an occasion to enjoy each other's company?" We ate dinner and made small talk about work, the weather, plans for the weekend. Normal conversation between 2 people who shared a house and a history but no longer shared much else. She was trying. I had to give her credit for that. But it felt like a performance, a carefully choreographed attempt to recreate something that was already gone. After dinner, we sat on the couch watching a movie neither of us was really paying attention to. Lumi curled against my side the way she used to, her head on my shoulder, her fingers tracing patterns on my chest. "I've missed this," she said softly. "I know I've been distracted lately, but the work situation should calm down soon." "Should it?" "The Henderson campaign launches next week. After that, things will get back to normal." Normal. As if normal was something we could return to instead of something we'd already lost. I looked down at her auburn hair catching the light from the television, felt the familiar weight of her against my side, and tried to remember when this had stopped feeling like home and started feeling like a performance. "Kellan?" Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Are we okay?" The question hung in the air between us, loaded with implications neither of us was ready to address directly. "I don't know," I said finally. "Are we?" She lifted her head to look at me, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been genuine regret in her eyes. "I want us to be." Wanting and being are two different things. She was quiet for a long moment, then settled back against my shoulder. "Sometimes I feel like we're strangers living in the same house." "Yeah," I said, staring at the television screen without seeing it. "Sometimes I feel that way too." We finished the movie in silence, both of us pretending that honesty had fixed something instead of just naming what was already broken. When she went upstairs to bed, I stayed on the couch, staring at the manila envelope Janet had given me and trying to decide what kind of man I wanted to be when this was all over. The photographs stared back at me like evidence in a trial where I was both prosecutor and defendant. Evidence of her guilt, proof of my failure, documentation of the end of everything I'd thought I understood about my own life. Outside, rain drummed against the windows with the steady rhythm of time running out. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of gray sky that makes everything look like a crime scene photograph. I woke up on the couch, my neck stiff from sleeping in an awkward position, the manila envelope still clutched in my hands like a security blanket made of evidence. Lumi was already up, moving through the kitchen with her usual weekend efficiency. Coffee brewing, toast browning, the newspaper spread across the counter like she was preparing for a normal Saturday in a normal marriage. "You slept on the couch," she observed, not looking up from her phone. "Didn't want to disturb you." "Since when do you worry about disturbing me?" "Since I found out you're planning a future that doesn't include me," I thought. But what I said was, "Since I started paying attention." She glanced up from her phone, studying my face with the careful attention of someone trying to read a foreign language. "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" "That intense, staring thing. Like you're waiting for me to confess to something." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a butter knife. "Maybe I am." "Confess to what? Working too much? Caring about my career? Having ambitions beyond this house? Is that what you call it?" The question hung between us like a challenge. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me the truth. Her mouth opened slightly and something that looked like genuine emotion flickered across her face. Then her phone buzzed with a text message, and the moment passed. "I have to run some errands," she said, grabbing her purse and keys. "Will you be here when I get back?" Where else would I go? She paused at the door, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I don't know, Kellan. Lately it feels like you're already somewhere else." After she left, I sat in the empty kitchen, drinking coffee that had gone cold and staring at the newspaper without reading it. The house felt different now that I knew the truth, less like a home and more like a stage set for a play that had already ended. My phone rang. Colby. "How'd it go with Janet?" he asked without preamble. "About as well as you'd expect." "That bad, huh? You want to talk about it?" "Not over the phone. Come by the bar. It's early, but I'll make an exception for a friend having a personal crisis." 30 minutes later, I was back in our usual booth, spreading Janet's photographs across the table like evidence in a court case where I was both the plaintiff and the primary victim. Colby whistled low. "Well, that's pretty definitive." "Yeah. So what's the plan?" "I don't know yet." "Want some advice from someone who's seen this movie before?" I nodded. "You've got 3 choices," Colby said, leaning back in his chair. "You can pretend you never saw this and hope it goes away. You can confront her directly and hope for the best. Or you can get strategic about it." "Strategic how?" "Think about what you really want here. You want her back? You want revenge? You want to just walk away clean?" "I want her to understand what she's throwing away." "Ah." Colby's expression shifted to something more serious. That's not the same as wanting her back. No, I said slowly. I guess it's not. Then you need to think like a general instead of a husband. What are your assets? What are her vulnerabilities? What does victory look like? I'd never thought about my marriage in military terms before, but the framework made sense. Know your enemy, control the battlefield, choose the time and place of engagement. Her reputation means everything to her, I said. She spent years building her professional image. And she's been careless. Janet's right. They're not even trying to hide it. So you've got ammunition. Question is, how do you want to use it? I stared at the photographs, thinking about 15 years of shared history, shared dreams, shared failures, thinking about the woman who used to laugh at my jokes and steal my sweaters and make me feel like the luckiest man in the world. Then I thought about the woman who now treated me like an inconvenient roommate while planning a future with someone else. I want her to know what it feels like, I said finally. To have someone you trust make you feel like a fool. Colby nodded slowly. That's a dangerous game, my friend. You sure you're ready for the consequences? I'm sure I'm tired of being the only one in this marriage who's playing by the rules. All right then. Colby pulled out his phone. Let me make some calls. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. The next few hours passed in a blur of planning and preparation. Colby's network proved even more extensive than I'd imagined. He had contacts in the service industry, the business community, even the local media. By the time I left the bar, we had the skeleton of a plan that would give Lumi exactly what she'd given me, a front-row seat to the destruction of everything she thought she could count on. I drove home through streets that looked different now that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. The neighborhood where Lumi and I had planned to grow old together now felt like enemy territory. Every familiar landmark, a reminder of futures that would never happen. She was waiting for me when I walked through the door, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and an expression that might have been concern if I hadn't known better. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Out." "Out where?" "Since when do you care where I spend my time?" "Since you started acting like a stranger." I sat down across from her, studying her face the way I'd learned to study terrain in Afghanistan, looking for hidden dangers, unexpected advantages, ways the landscape might shift without warning. "Maybe I'm just tired of pretending," I said. "Pretending what?" "That everything's fine, that we're happy, that you're not lying to me every time you open your mouth." Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know about Zane." The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually flinched, her carefully maintained composure cracking like ice under pressure. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Regional director, corner office, drives a Tesla, thinks he's God's gift to women. Ring any bells?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind racing, calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much damage control she'd need to do. "It's not what you think," she said finally. "Really? What is it then?" "It's complicated." I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "Complicated. That's what we're calling it now?" "You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work, the expectations, the competition. Sometimes I need someone who gets that world." "And I don't?" "You're a good man, Kellan, but you're not ambitious. You're content with your job, your routine, your small life. I need more than that." Small life. The phrase hit me like a slap across the face. 15 years of marriage, and she'd reduced everything we'd built together to a small life that wasn't worth preserving. "So you decided to upgrade." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like? Explain it to me, because I'm apparently too small-minded to understand." She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her teacup like it might contain answers to questions she wasn't ready to ask. "I feel like I'm disappearing," she said finally. "Like I'm becoming someone I never wanted to be. The dutiful wife, the supportive partner, the woman who smiles and nods while her dreams get smaller every year. What dreams? You never told me about any dreams. Because you never asked. I asked all the time. You're the one who stopped answering. I stopped answering because you stopped really listening. We stared at each other across the kitchen table, 15 years of accumulated resentments and unspoken disappointments hanging between us like a wall neither of us knew how to climb. So this is my fault, I said. It's not about fault. It's about compatibility, about wanting different things. And what you want is him. She didn't answer directly, but the silence was answer enough. How long? I asked. Does it matter? It matters to me. 6 months, maybe 7. And you were planning to tell me when? I don't know. I kept thinking it would end, that it was just a phase. But it's not. It's real, Kellan. More real than anything I've felt in years. Real. As if our marriage had been some kind of elaborate fiction we'd been performing for an audience of no one. So what now? I asked. I don't know. I guess we need to figure out what comes next. Yeah, I said, standing up from the table. I guess we do. I walked upstairs, leaving her sitting in the kitchen with her tea and her justifications. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I supposed, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the framed wedding photo on the nightstand. 2 young people who'd thought they understood what forever meant, smiling like they'd just won the lottery. Maybe we had back then. Maybe we'd just been too young and stupid to realize that lottery tickets have expiration dates. My phone buzzed with a text from Colby. Plans in motion. You sure about this? I looked around the bedroom at 15 years of shared history, her books mixed with mine on the shelves, our clothes hanging side by side in the closet, the quilt her grandmother had made us as a wedding gift spread across the bed, where we used to talk about everything and nothing until we fell asleep in each other's arms. All of it felt like artifacts from someone else's life now. I'm sure, I texted back. Then I deleted the message and started planning for war. Monday morning brought unseasonably warm weather and the kind of clarity that comes from burning bridges. I'd spent the weekend in a strange state of calm, like a soldier who's finally received his marching orders after months of waiting for deployment. Lumi moved through our morning routine with careful politeness, as if acknowledging our Saturday conversation might somehow make it more real. She made coffee, I made toast, and we performed the domestic ballet we'd perfected over 15 years of marriage. The only difference was that now we both knew we were dancing to a song that was almost over. I'll be late again tonight, she said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. The Henderson campaign launches tomorrow, and we're doing final preparations. Of course you are. She paused, lipstick halfway to her mouth. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just seems like you're always preparing for something these days. It's called having a career, Kellan. Right, a career. How could I forget? She turned to face me, her expression caught between guilt and defiance. Are we going to do this every morning now? The passive-aggressive comments, the suspicious looks? I don't know. Are we going to keep pretending that everything's normal? I told you it's complicated. Yeah, you mentioned that. What you didn't mention is how long you plan to keep me hanging while you figure out which life you want to live. She stared at me for a moment, and I could see her weighing options, calculating responses, trying to find the right combination of words to keep me manageable while she sorted out her mess. I need time, she said finally. Time for what? To figure things out, to make sure I'm making the right decision. The right decision for who? For both of us. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Lady, you made your decision 6 months ago. Everything since then has just been you trying to avoid the consequences. Her face flushed with something that might have been anger or embarrassment. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You want him? Go be with him. You want me? Then end it with him. But don't ask me to sit around like a faithful dog while you test drive your upgrade. That's not what I'm doing. Then what are you doing? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. For a moment, her carefully constructed facade cracked, and I saw something that looked like genuine confusion in her eyes. I don't know, she said quietly. I honestly don't know. Well, when you figure it out, let me know. I'll be here, living my small life. She flinched at the callback to Saturday's conversation, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. We'll talk about this tonight. Will we? Or will you be too busy with final preparations? The door slammed behind her, rattling the windows and leaving me alone with my coffee and the first phase of a plan that would either give me closure or turn me into someone I didn't recognize. I called in sick to work again, ignoring Jim's concerned voicemail about my recent absences. Some battles required your full attention, and today was the opening engagement of a war I hadn't chosen, but was determined to win. First stop: Morrison and Associates, the glass and steel monument to corporate ambition where Lumi had built her career and found her replacement husband. The building sat in the gentrified downtown district like a middle finger pointed at the rest of the city, all clean lines and expensive materials designed to intimidate anyone who couldn't afford to belong there. I parked across the street and waited. Janet had provided me with Zane's schedule, his habits, his routines. He arrived at work every morning at 8:30 sharp, driving his Tesla like he was auditioning for a luxury car commercial. Today would be different. At 8:25, I walked across the street and keyed his car. Not a random scratch, a deliberate, methodical destruction of the driver's side paint job that spelled out a simple message: trust is everything. Then I placed a note under his windshield wiper. Nice car. Shame about the paint. Even bigger shame about your wife not knowing where you spend your evenings. I was back in my truck before he arrived, watching through binoculars as he discovered my handiwork. His face went through a fascinating progression of emotions: confusion, anger, fear, and finally a kind of panicked calculation that told me everything I needed to know about his character. He looked around the parking lot like a guilty man expecting to find accusers lurking behind every car. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call that I was willing to bet wasn't to his insurance company. Phase 1 complete. Time for Phase 2. Morrison and Associates occupied 15 floors of gleaming corporate real estate, but I was only interested in the executive level where Lumi and Zane conducted their business. The building directory in the lobby told me everything I needed to know about the company's structure, and the security desk was staffed by a bored-looking guard who barely glanced at visitors who looked like they belonged. I'd learned a long time ago that confidence was the best disguise. Walk like you own the place, dress like you belong there, and most people will assume you have every right to be wherever you are. The elevator carried me to the 14th floor, where Morrison and Associates had created a monument to modern corporate culture. Glass offices, open workspaces, motivational posters about synergy and excellence, the kind of environment that turned human beings into human resources and called it progress. Lumi's office was exactly what I'd expected: corner location, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture that probably cost more than I made in a month. She wasn't there, which was perfect for my purposes. Her assistant, a young woman named Jennifer, who'd always been friendly during company parties, looked up from her computer with a smile that faltered when she recognized me. "Mr. Brooks? What are you doing here?" "Surprising my wife," I said, holding up a bouquet of flowers I'd bought from the lobby gift shop. "Is she in?" "She's in a meeting with Mr. Whitaker and the Henderson team. They should be done in about an hour." "Perfect. Mind if I wait in her office? I want this to be a real surprise." Jennifer hesitated, clearly uncertain about office protocol for estranged husbands bearing flowers. "I promise I won't touch anything," I said, adding just enough wounded husband to my voice to make her feel guilty for questioning me. "I guess that would be okay, but please don't disturb anything. She's very particular about her workspace." "Of course." Lumi's office was a shrine to professional ambition. Awards on the walls, client photos on the desk, a bookshelf full of marketing texts and business biographies, everything carefully arranged to project success, competence, and control. I sat in her chair and opened her computer. She'd changed her password since I'd last accessed her accounts, but 15 years of marriage had taught me her patterns, her mother's maiden name plus the year we'd met. Some habits die hard, even when marriages don't. Her email account was a treasure trove of professional correspondence, client communications, and personal messages that painted a detailed picture of her double life. Messages with Zane mixed in between legitimate business communications, plans for weekend getaways disguised as work conferences, financial discussions about shared expenses that had nothing to do with corporate budgets. But the real prize was her calendar. Not just the official company calendar that showed meetings and deadlines, but her personal calendar that tracked her actual schedule. Every lunch with Zane, every evening at his condo, every lie she'd told me about working late. I forwarded the most incriminating emails to my personal account, then composed a message that would serve as my declaration of war. To whom it may concern, trust is the foundation of any successful partnership, whether personal or professional. When that trust is violated, the consequences extend far beyond the immediate relationship. Some secrets are too big to stay hidden, and some lies are too expensive to maintain. The truth has a way of surfacing, often at the most inconvenient times. Consider this a friendly warning that the truth is coming, and it's bringing friends. A concerned observer. I sent the message to everyone in her contacts list, colleagues, clients, friends, family members. Then I deleted the sent message and cleared the browser history, leaving no trace of my visit except for the flowers on her desk and a note that read, "Thought you might need these for the funeral. K." By the time I left the building, my phone was already buzzing with text messages. The first wave of consequences was beginning to crash over the carefully constructed world Lumi had built for herself. I drove to Colby's bar, where he was waiting with a beer and a grin that suggested he'd been monitoring the situation through his network of contacts. "How'd it go?" he asked, like shooting fish in a barrel. "And phase 2? "In motion. Her phone's probably melting from all the incoming calls. You know there's no going back from this, right? Once you cross this line, you're committed to seeing it through to the end." I crossed that line the moment I found out about Zane. Everything since then has just been me catching up to reality. Colby nodded and raised his beer in a mock toast. "Then here's to reality. May it be everything you hoped for and nothing like what you expected." We drank in companionable silence, two middle-aged men watching the first act of a drama that would either end in justice or mutual destruction. Outside, the city went about its business, unaware that one small corner of its social ecosystem was about to experience a controlled detonation. My phone buzzed with a text from Lumi. "What did you do?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I stopped pretending." Then I turned off my phone and ordered another beer. The war had officially begun, and I intended to enjoy every minute of it. The next morning brought chaos wrapped in the mundane routine of coffee and toast. Lumi's phone had been ringing since 6 a.m., a constant stream of calls from colleagues, clients, and friends, trying to understand the cryptic message that had appeared in their inboxes the night before. She sat at the kitchen table in her robe, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her face pale with the kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting fires all night. "My boss wants to see me first thing this morning," she said, without looking up from her phone. 3 clients have called asking about security concerns with their accounts. Jennifer said someone left flowers on my desk yesterday with a note about a funeral. Sounds like you're having a rough morning. Don't. Her voice was sharp, brittle. Don't pretend you don't know what's happening. I know exactly what's happening. The question is, do you? She looked up from her phone, her eyes red-rimmed and angry. You sent that message, didn't you? That cryptic warning about truth and consequences. Did I? This is insane, Kellan. You're sabotaging my career over a personal problem. Personal problem? I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Is that what we're calling it now? You know what I mean. No, I really don't. Explain to me how destroying our marriage is a personal problem that shouldn't affect your professional life. Because they're separate things. Are they? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your professional life is where you found my replacement. She stared at me for a moment, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. You're trying to destroy me. I'm trying to give you what you gave me, a front row seat to watching everything you care about fall apart. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up from the table, feeling something cold and dangerous settling in my chest. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been telling me you were unhappy instead of sneaking around behind my back. Fair would have been ending our marriage before starting your next one. Fair would have been treating me like a human being instead of an inconvenience you had to manage. I never meant for it to happen this way, but it did happen this way, and now we're both going to live with the consequences. Her phone rang again. She glanced at the screen, her face going even paler. It's my mother. Better answer it. I'm sure she has questions. Lumi grabbed her phone and headed upstairs, her voice already shifting into damage control mode. Hi, Mom. No, everything's fine. Someone's playing a prank. I finished my coffee and got ready for work, listening to her frantic explanations echoing through the house. The woman who'd been so confident about her choices was discovering that choices have consequences, and consequences don't care about your convenience. At the warehouse, Jim was waiting for me with the expression of a man who'd run out of patience. We need to talk, he said, gesturing toward his office. I followed him, already knowing what was coming. Jim had been managing people long enough to recognize the signs of a personal crisis bleeding into professional performance. You've called in sick twice this week, he said, closing the door behind us. Your crew says you've been distracted when you are here, and frankly, you look like hell. I'm dealing with some personal issues. I figured as much. The question is, are you going to be able to handle them and still do your job? I thought about the question seriously. My marriage was ending. I was systematically destroying my wife's life, and I was turning into someone I didn't entirely recognize. But the work still needed to get done, and Jim deserved better than having to manage my personal drama. Yes, I said, I can handle both. Good. Because I like you, Kellan, and I'd hate to have to make a decision I don't want to make. Understood. Now, you want to tell me what's really going on? Sometimes it helps to talk to someone who's not directly involved. I considered the offer. Jim was a good man, a straight shooter who'd seen enough of life to understand that sometimes good people found themselves in impossible situations. My wife's been having an affair, I said. I found out last week. Jim nodded slowly, his expression shifting from managerial concern to genuine sympathy. That's rough. You two gonna try to work it out? No, we're way past that. Divorce? Eventually. Right now, we're still figuring out what the ending looks like. Word of advice from someone who's been married longer than you've been alive? I nodded. Don't let anger make you stupid. Whatever you're planning, make sure you can live with the consequences, because you're going to have to live with them long after the anger fades. Jim's words stayed with me through the morning, a counterpoint to the cold satisfaction I'd been feeling since launching my campaign against Lumi. He was right. Anger was a powerful motivator, but it was also a dangerous guide. The question was whether I was still angry enough to care. During lunch break, I drove to the downtown district where Zane's condo occupied 2 floors of a glass tower that screamed new money and borrowed taste. The building had the kind of security that looked impressive but was designed more for show than actual protection. I parked across the street and waited. Janet's surveillance had established Zane's patterns. He came home for lunch twice a week, usually when he was meeting Lumi for their afternoon appointments. Today was Tuesday, which meant I had a 50-50 chance of catching them together. At 12:30, Lumi's car pulled into the visitor parking area. She sat in the driver's seat for a moment, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror, then walked toward the building with the confident stride of a woman who belonged there. 5 minutes later, Zane's Tesla pulled into his reserved space. He got out slowly, still favoring the driver's side door that I'd decorated with my message about trust. The repair job was obvious, a different shade of paint that stood out like a scar on the otherwise pristine surface. I gave them 15 minutes to get settled, then made my move. The building's security desk was staffed by a guard who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I walked through the lobby like I owned the place, nodding confidently at the guard as I headed for the elevator. "Excuse me," the guard called out. "You need to sign in." "Zane Whitaker, 14B, I said, pulling out my phone like I was checking an important message. "He's expecting me." The guard glanced at his computer screen, then waved me through with the kind of indifference that explained why the building had 3 break-ins in the past year. The 14th floor hallway was all marble and muted lighting, designed to make residents feel like they were living in a luxury hotel. Apartment 14B sat at the end of the hall, its door marked with a brass nameplate that read Zede Whitaker in elegant script. I pressed my ear to the door and heard voices from inside. Lumi's laugh, Zane's deeper tones, the sound of 2 people who thought they were safe from the consequences of their choices. Instead of knocking, I pulled out my phone and called Zane's number. Through the door, I heard his phone ring, then his voice answering with professional courtesy. "Zane Whitaker." "Mr. Whitaker, this is building security. We've had reports of suspicious activity on your floor. Have you noticed anything unusual?" "Suspicious activity? No, I haven't noticed anything. We're going to need to do a quick security check of all units on 14. Can you be available in about 10 minutes? "Actually, this isn't a great time. I'm in an important meeting." "I understand, sir, but this is a security matter. It won't take long." Through the door, I heard him explaining the situation to Lumi, her voice rising in what sounded like panic. They were trapped. If they left now, they'd look guilty. If they stayed, they'd have to explain why Lumi was there during her supposed work hours. I ended the call and walked back to the elevator, leaving them to figure out how to handle their first real crisis as a couple. Sometimes the best revenge was simply forcing people to confront the reality of their choices. Back at the warehouse, I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised my crew. Physical activity had always helped me think, and I needed clarity for the next phase of my plan. Around 4 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Lumi. "We need to talk. Tonight. No more games." I stared at the message, considering my options. She was right. We did need to talk. But not on her terms, and not on her timeline. "Colby's bar, 7 p.m. Come alone," I texted back. "That's not what I meant." "It's what I meant. You want to talk, that's where I'll be." I turned off my phone and finished my shift, ignoring the constant buzzing of incoming messages. Whatever crisis was unfolding in Lumi's carefully constructed world could wait until I was ready to deal with it. At 7 p.m. sharp, I was sitting in my usual booth at Colby's, nursing a beer and watching the door. Lumi arrived 10 minutes later, looking like she'd been through a blender set on high speed. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled. Her professional composure cracked like a facade that could no longer support the weight of maintaining appearances. She slid into the booth across from me, her eyes scanning the room like she expected to find photographers lurking in the shadows. "This is humiliating," she said. "Meeting in a dive bar like we're having some kind of clandestine affair." Funny choice of words. "Don't start." "I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing something you started 6 months ago." She stared at me across the scarred wooden table, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd married, vulnerable, uncertain, human. "What do you want, Kellan? What's it going to take to end this?" "End what?" "This campaign of harassment. The messages, the vandalism, the security calls, whatever you're planning next. I want you to understand what you've done. I understand perfectly. I made a mistake, and now you're punishing me for it. A mistake? I leaned forward, feeling that cold anger settling in my chest again. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. A mistake is double booking dinner plans. What you did was make a conscious choice every day for 6 months to lie to my face while planning a future with someone else. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Were you planning to send me a memo, a formal notice of termination? I was going to tell you. When? When I figured out what I wanted. And what do you want? She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her wine glass like it might contain answers to questions she wasn't ready to ask. I want to feel alive again, she said finally. I want to feel like my life matters, like I'm building something important instead of just maintaining something comfortable. And you can't do that with me. I don't know, maybe, but not the way things are now. The way things are now is the result of choices you made. You want to feel alive? Fine, but don't expect me to subsidize your journey of self-discovery while you figure out whether I'm worth keeping around. That's not fair. Fair doesn't enter into it anymore. Fair was the casualty of your first lie. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing against mine. It doesn't have to be like this. We could try counseling, work through this together. Together? I pulled my hand away. Lady, you checked out of this marriage 6 months ago. You just forgot to tell me I was flying solo. I never stopped caring about you. You just started caring about him more. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You made a choice. You chose him over me, his life over ours, his future over what we'd built together. Own it. Tears started forming in her eyes, and for a moment I felt something that might have been sympathy. Then I remembered the hotel receipts, the secret phone calls, the months of lies delivered with a smile. What happens now? She asked. Now you get to live with the consequences of your choices, just like I've been doing. And what about us? There is no us. There's you, there's me, and there's the mess you made between us. You want to clean it up? Start by being honest about what you really want. I want to try again. No, you don't. You want to avoid the consequences of your choices. There's a difference. She stared at me for a long moment, then stood up from the table. You've changed, Kellan. You've become someone I don't recognize. Yeah, I said, raising my beer in a mock toast. Funny how discovering your wife's been lying to you for months can do that to a person. She walked out of the bar without looking back, leaving me alone with my beer and the growing certainty that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Jim's warning echoed in my head, don't let anger make you stupid, but it was too late for wisdom. The war had escalated beyond the point of negotiation. Now it was just a matter of seeing who would be left standing when the smoke cleared. Thursday morning brought the kind of autumn chill that makes you realize summer's promises were just another lie we tell ourselves to get through the winter. I woke up on the couch again, my neck protesting another night of sleeping in positions the human spine wasn't designed to accommodate. Lumi was already gone, her coffee cup abandoned in the sink like evidence of a life that was moving too fast to clean up after itself. A note on the kitchen counter, written in her precise handwriting. Staying at Miranda's for a few days. We both need space to think. Miranda, her loyal friend from the office, the one who'd been covering for her affair and probably cheering from the sidelines while my marriage imploded. The note should have felt like relief. No more awkward morning encounters, no more pretending we were anything other than two strangers sharing a mortgage. Instead, it felt like the final confirmation that everything we'd built together was officially over. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then immediately retrieved it. Evidence. In war, you never knew what information might prove useful later. At work, Jim cornered me during the morning briefing with the expression of a man who'd run out of patience for personal drama interfering with professional responsibilities. "You look terrible," he said. "When's the last time you got a full night's sleep?" "Sleep's overrated." "So is martyrdom. You're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. But you're here and you're functional, so I'm going to assume you know what you're doing." "I do." "Good. Because we've got the Morrison account shipping out today, and I need someone I can count on to make sure it goes smoothly." Morrison and Associates, Lumi's company. The universe apparently had a sense of humor about timing. "I'll handle it personally," I said. "I was hoping you'd say that." The Morrison shipment was routine, office furniture and equipment for their new satellite location across town. But routine shipments offered opportunities for someone who understood how information flowed through corporate supply chains. I made sure to be present when their representative came to inspect the delivery. A nervous-looking woman in her 20s who introduced herself as Jennifer, Lumi's assistant, the one who'd let me into the office earlier that week. "Mr. Brooks?" She looked surprised to see me. I thought you worked in logistics." "I do. I'm overseeing this shipment personally." "Oh. Well, everything looks good. The furniture should be perfect for the new office." "New office?" "The expansion. We're opening a regional branch to handle the increased client load. Mr. Whitaker will be managing it." Zane was getting promoted, expanding his territory, building his empire, probably planning to take Lumi with him to his new kingdom. The pieces of their future together were falling into place, while the pieces of my past were still smoldering in the ruins. "Congratulations," I said. "Big opportunities for everyone involved." "Yes, it's very exciting. Although there's been some tension in the office lately. People are worried about security issues, confidential information, that sort of thing." "Security issues?" Jennifer glanced around nervously, then leaned closer like she was sharing state secrets. "Someone's been sending anonymous messages to clients, employees, even family members. Cryptic warnings about truth and consequences. It's got everyone on edge." "That does sound concerning." "Mrs. Brooks, Lumi, she's been really stressed about it. Some people think it might be corporate espionage or a disgruntled former employee. What do you think?" "I think someone knows something they're not supposed to know, and they're playing games with people's lives." "Smart girl. Too bad she was working for the wrong side." "Well," I said, handing her the delivery confirmation, "I hope they figure it out soon. Uncertainty can be very damaging to a business." "Yes, it can." I watched her drive away, then pulled out my phone and made a call to Janet Torres. "I need more information about Zane Whitaker's promotion," I said when she answered. "What kind of information?" "Timeline, financial details, who else is involved, everything you can find. This is going to cost extra." "Bill me." "You sure you want to keep pushing this? Sometimes it's better to let sleeping dogs lie." "The dogs are already awake. I'm just making sure they're barking at the right people." Janet sighed. "I'll have something for you by tomorrow." That evening, I drove to Miranda's apartment complex, a trendy development in the gentrified part of town where young professionals went to pretend they were living in New York City. Lumi's car was parked in the visitor section, looking out of place among the compact cars and motorcycles of people who thought image was more important than substance. I didn't knock on the door or try to confront them directly. Instead, I sat in my truck and waited, watching the windows of Miranda's second-floor apartment. Around 9 p.m., I saw shadows moving behind the curtains, two figures in animated conversation, probably planning their next move in whatever game they thought they were playing. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop harassing my girlfriend or you'll regret it. Zane." Apparently, he'd decided to play protector, riding to Lumi's rescue like some kind of corporate knight in shining armor. I texted back, "Which girlfriend? You've got so many, it's hard to keep track." The response came immediately. "Stay away from us." Or what? You'll key my car? Oh wait, that's my move. This is harassment. This is consequences. Look it up in the dictionary. It's right between choices and accountability. My phone rang. Zane, apparently deciding that direct confrontation was more effective than text messaging. Listen to me. You psychotic. No, I interrupted. You listen to me. You want to play house with my wife? Fine, but don't expect me to make it easy for you. She's not your wife anymore. Actually, she is. Legally, financially, and in every way that matters. You're just the side entertainment she's been using to avoid dealing with her real problems. You don't know what you're talking about. I know she's been lying to both of us. I know you're leveraged up to your eyeballs trying to maintain a lifestyle you can't afford. And I know that your promotion is contingent on keeping this affair quiet, which is going to be pretty difficult when everyone in town knows about it. Silence on the other end of the line. That's right, I continued. I know about the new office, the expansion plans, the careful way you've been positioning yourself for advancement. What do you think happens to all of that when your boss finds out you've been having an affair with a married colleague? Think Morrison and Associates is going to want that kind of publicity attached to their new venture? You can't prove anything. I don't have to prove anything. I just have to create enough doubt to make people ask questions. And once people start asking questions, the truth has a way of surfacing. What do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to realize that stealing someone's life isn't a victimless crime, and I want you to live with the same uncertainty you've been putting me through for the past 6 months. This is insane. This is justice. The only difference is that you're not going to see it coming. I hung up and drove home, leaving them to contemplate the reality that their secret affair was becoming a very public problem. Friday morning brought rain and a call from Janet with information that would change everything. Zane Whitaker's promotion isn't what it appears to be, she said without preamble. The new office is real, but it's not an expansion, it's damage control. Meaning? Meaning Morrison and Associates has been losing clients, and they need someone to take the blame. Whitaker's being set up as a scapegoat. The promotion is actually a lateral move designed to isolate him from the main office when the axe falls. And he doesn't know? He thinks he's being rewarded for excellent performance. In reality, he's being positioned to take responsibility for the company's recent problems. What kind of problems? Client complaints, missed deadlines, budget overruns, nothing criminal but enough to damage the company's reputation. They need a fall guy, and Whitaker's ego made him the perfect candidate. What about Lumi? She's been assigned to his team. Officially, it's a promotion for her too. Unofficially, she's being moved away from sensitive accounts because of concerns about her judgment. Concerns about her judgment? Apparently, someone's been raising questions about her professionalism, her reliability, her ability to maintain appropriate boundaries with colleagues. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Someone's been busy. Someone's been very busy. The question is, what do you want to do with this information? I want to make sure they get exactly what they deserve, which is each other. That afternoon, I composed an email that would serve as my final move in a game that had already lasted too long. To the staff of Morrison and Associates, it has come to my attention that certain employees have been engaging in unprofessional conduct that reflects poorly on the company's reputation and values. Specifically, the ongoing affair between Regional Director Zane Whitaker and Marketing Manager Lumi Brooks has created a hostile work environment and compromised the integrity of client relationships. This behavior is not only unethical but potentially damaging to the company's standing in the business community. I trust that appropriate action will be taken to address this situation before it escalates further. A copy of this message has been forwarded to the Better Business Bureau, the local Chamber of Commerce, and selected members of the media. A concerned stakeholder. I sent the message to every email address I could find associated with Morrison and Associates, then sat back to watch the final act of a drama that had been building for months. My phone started ringing within an hour. First Lumi, then Zane, then numbers I didn't recognize, probably colleagues, friends, family members who'd received copies of the message through the company's forwarding system. I ignored them all. By evening, the local business journal had picked up the story. Not front-page news, but a small item in their corporate notes section about personnel changes at Morrison & Associates following concerns about professional conduct. It was enough. In a city where reputation was currency and gossip traveled faster than the internet, it was more than enough. Saturday morning brought silence. No frantic phone calls, no angry text messages, no desperate attempts at damage control. Just the kind of quiet that follows a storm when everyone's too exhausted to keep fighting and too hurt to start healing. I made coffee and sat in my empty kitchen, reading the newspaper and trying to remember what normal felt like. The house felt different now, not like a home that had been abandoned, but like a museum displaying artifacts from someone else's life. Around noon, Lumi's car pulled into the driveway. She sat behind the wheel for a long time before getting out, moving like someone who'd aged years in the space of days. She walked through the front door without knocking, which seemed appropriate given that she still technically lived here. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" "It's over. The job, the promotion, everything. They fired both of us yesterday." "I heard." "You heard, or you caused it. Does it matter?" She stared at me for a long moment, then sat down at the kitchen table like her legs couldn't support her weight anymore. "You destroyed my life. I gave you what you gave me, a front row seat to watching everything you cared about fall apart. I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen this way, and now we're both living with the consequences. What happens now? Now you get to start over, build a new life, make new choices, figure out who you want to be when you're not lying to everyone you claim to care about. And us? There is no us. There hasn't been for months. I just finally caught up to reality." She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. "I'm sorry," she said finally, "for all of it. For the lies, the betrayal, the way I treated you. You didn't deserve that." "No, I didn't." "Can you ever forgive me?" "Maybe. Someday. But not today, and not for the reasons you want." "What do you mean?" "You're not sorry you had the affair. You're sorry you got caught. You're not sorry you lied to me. You're sorry the lies stopped working. You're not apologizing for what you did. You're apologizing for the consequences." That's not true. Isn't it? If your plan had worked, if you'd managed to transition from me to him without any mess or complications, would you be sitting here apologizing? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I'll file for divorce next week," she said. "Make it as easy as possible. Good. The house, keep it. I never want to see this place again." "Where will you go?" "Somewhere else. Somewhere that doesn't smell like 15 years of wasted time." She stood up from the table, moving like someone who'd finally run out of things to say. "For what it's worth," she said, pausing at the door, "I did love you. Maybe not the way you needed, but I did love you." "Yeah," I said, not looking up from my newspaper. "For what it's worth, I loved you too." Past tense. She left without another word, taking her keys and her guilt and her carefully constructed justifications with her. I listened to her car pull out of the driveway, then disappear down the street toward whatever future she'd managed to salvage from the wreckage of her choices. I finished my coffee and started making a list of everything I'd need to do to extract myself from this life and start building a new one. It was a long list, but I had time. For the first time in months, I had nothing but time. Outside, the rain had stopped, and weak sunlight was trying to break through the clouds. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind me that storms eventually end, and sometimes what comes after is better than what came before. I folded the newspaper, put my coffee cup in the dishwasher, and started planning my escape from the museum of my former life. The war was over, And I'd won by the only metric that mattered. I was still standing, and I was finally free. The truth had surfaced, just like I'd promised, and it had brought friends.